Welcome to the Muskegon channel. It's Andy O'Reilly, and once again, I've taken the risk of showing up at DJ Hilson's office. One of these days, I know my luck's going to run out. My dear friend DJ Hilson is here, and Jason Carlson with the. You're new to me. We've met, you said, a couple of times. Never under any professional things, thank God, which is good, very good. But Jason is with the Muskegon parole office here in town. And DJ has got one of his big talks coming up, again with the high schoolers here in town, Shattering the Myths, your talk about marijuana.
Yep.
And Jason, you've got some role in some of the drugs and some of the stuff going on around town, so let's kind of dig into it and talk a little bit about it. DJ, we'll start with you. Shattering the Myths coming up at Orchard View this time. Talk a little bit about the presentation and what you bring.
Sure. This is our second installment.
Okay.
Last time we did this past fall, we had two individuals who had been struggling with addiction, both marijuana and heroin, kind of provide their testimony about the struggles they went through. And again, it's really about educating our young people, because as we have seen through our own data, is that our high school age, middle school and high school age kids here in Muskegon County really are their perception of risk when it comes to drug use, in particular prescription medication and marijuana use. Their perception of risk in engaging in those behaviors has started to drop relatively dramatically.
Right.
So there is a need for education. And so this second installment is really focused in on the marijuana piece. And we were fortunate enough to have an individual from the Colorado area come in. He's a nationally known, recognized speaker. He'll be giving some remarks to the students, kind of at the student level. We also have the privilege of a young lady who has a story to tell us in her journey dealing with her battles of substance use and abuse, which includes getting involved in the criminal justice system, and she's going to tell her story. And she first started using marijuana, so she's going to kind of talk about that. And the last piece of the panel discussion is John Workman, who is owner and operator of Eagle Alloy here in town.
Okay.
He's representing the manufacturers. As you know, Muskegon County has a lot of blue-collar manufacturing ties, roots to it, and still does. They're one of the major employers here in this county, and as of the last few years, they have seen a decline in their ability to hire folks who can pass a drug screen. But more importantly, after they've been hired, retaining folks who on a routine basis have to submit to drug screens, and they're not passing those drug screens, knowing full well that they're going to take those drug screens. And so his part in this particular panel in this session is to talk to the kids about employment and what employers are looking for, and why it's important to maintain kind of a drug-free lifestyle in the manufacturing business, certainly, because of what they deal with and the machines that they operate, materials that they handle.
Scary stuff sometimes.
Very scary stuff.
Tell me, Jason, about your role in the parole office now, and how early do you start to see young people take that first step into these kind of problems, and how long can it last for them?
Well, I've worked for the Department of Corrections for 20 years, and I've been managing the parole office here in Muskegon for 10. And what we always run into is we basically run into people that started as early as 12 years old.
Yeah. Well, everybody knows my story. I was 12 when I was drinking.
Right.
So, and it took me till I was 33 till I got out of it, and I probably would have done a lot of business with you had I not been as lucky as I had.
Right. And that's what we see, and we see that where we deal with a lot of chronic drug users and alcoholics, and a lot of times when we go back and we look at what's going on, I mean, this is the first time they were told maybe that they weren't supposed to do this, or this is, was going to turn out this way, and like what we've witnessed over the years is that people come forward after they spend time incarcerated, and they kind of wake up, so to speak, if they do some time of sobriety, and they want to help people and say, hey, maybe if I could have made these changes back in junior high or high school, I wouldn't have gone down this road. Because I've never heard anybody say, once they've gone down that road, that they've, enjoyed it.
Right.
That they,
What's tough?
Yeah.
Hey, believe me, I've seen dude trying to dig myself out of it at 33.
Right.
And the mountains I had to climb to get over it. I mean, it was at the end there. It was really, really my own enslavement. I felt
Yep.
with alcohol. I was
Exactly.
trapped. I wasn't behind bars, but I was literally in my own prison with addiction. And I think when I give my talk to kids and talk about addiction and things like that, and I don't know because I haven't seen your presentation all the way through. Mine is more of a, this is what happened to me, this is how I got out of it, and this is what life is now. Do you take the scared straight approach with these young people, or is it more of a, here's the facts and...
Yeah, what we've seen recently is that scared straight isn't really the effective
Right.
message to give.
Right.
It's more along the lines of telling the story. Similar to I've heard you tell your story, and so it's similar along those lines because, at the end of the day, what I'm hoping to gain from this is that our young people are going to have information, and information is powerful.
Yeah.
People are going to make the decisions they're going to make. What I'm hoping is to provide them the information so that at least they can make informed decisions.
Yeah.
After everything is said and done, I'm not here to micromanage anybody. I can barely micromanage myself. So, but for me, my experience has always been is I make better decisions when I'm properly informed,
Yep.
and I have that information. Now, ultimately, if folks are going to get that information and ignore it and still make the wrong decisions, that's their choice.
Hey.
And they're going to hear what might happen to them if they make that choice, or what potentially that road could lead to.
Yeah.
Whether or not it ultimately does, is their, that's kind of their life journey. But at the end of the day, it really is about giving them that information, that education, so they understand that, hey, look, if they make that choice and something bad happens to them, or their life changes, for the bad. They were told.
You knew.
You were kind of warned about what this might be the case.
Do you hear from young people today, because we've talked before about how marijuana is being used more medically and things like that, do you hear the other side of the argument now from younger people who say that my mom or dad or my aunt or uncle have had some good success using marijuana as medicine? Does that come up to you?
Yeah, we deal with that. We deal with the idea that there's greater access. It is being labeled as medicine.
Yeah.
But my counter to that is you put a can of recreational marijuana next to a can of medical marijuana, there is no difference, in my opinion.
Right.
One can be substituted for the other. So right. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, and the effects are the same. Is that if you're taking a medicine and you're abusing it,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you're not going to gain anything from it.
No.
And that's the whole part of addiction, is once you get caught up into the addiction where you're starting to crave it and want it and use it, then you fall into this spiral and you don't know where that's going to end.
I found out.
Yeah. Well,
mine happened to be booze, but I certainly knew where
it's the same. I
Yeah.
mean, there's not. That's the hard part, is you're risking something that you really don't know what it's going to end up. And I know our speaker here at the Shattering the Myths, I mean, she wasn't able to stop.
Yeah.
And I mean, it took going to prison to realize that she got herself into a part of life that she never wanted to experience.
Yeah.
And so that's the part we're trying to say is, with the opiates out there, the
Terrible.
heroin use, people are not getting that second chance anymore.
No, they're not.
They're dying.
Right.
And they're dying a lot every weekend, every night. And so it's really scary for us to see that, because this is something we haven't experienced before.
I see it. I mean, every week I come down. I come down. I go to the jail, and I do with Muskegon, and I do the reading tutoring program on Tuesday nights. And it's not so much that they can't read, but it's kind of a way to get in there and show these. And I have yet to meet a hardened criminal in that program. What I think I find are a lot of people that were in the same boat I was at one point or another with addiction and things that. Their life took that turn in the wrong direction, and they're kind of looking for that hand. And like we talked earlier on here, some of these guys have been at it since they were 12 years old. And they'll say to me, and in our Tuesday night things, they're like, I don't know another way to live. I don't know what life's going to be like when I get out of this. And where do I turn and what do I do?
And it's amazing to...
So to catch them young is what I'm getting at,
right.
and keep them from trying to be there when they're my age or older.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is scary. I can't imagine a life lived that never gets to know different than being a part of that system. Scary. scary stuff.
It is. It is scary stuff, and you know, and that's why, you know, all what we've known, all the research that we've done is to talk to them early, and talk to them often.
Yep.
In fact, you know, as part of the network that we're both involved in, there are tools out there even for parents to get their hands on, and it's tough these days being a parent and having to have these very difficult conversations with, you know, essentially minor children.
Sure.
But, you know, as I look at it as a parent of 3, do I want the influence to come from me, or do I want it to come from one of their friends?
Yep.
And I would much rather be the influence,
Yeah.
And control the narrative, if you will. But it's difficult. I mean, you know, as Jason was saying, the woman who's speaking on behalf of kind of the addict population, you know, came from a very rough environment, and, you know, people cope with things differently, and unfortunately, I think a lot of what folks would use as a coping mechanism could be alcohol,
Sure.
could be drugs, and then they get into that cycle,
Yep.
and it becomes more difficult every day to get out. So, you know, although this is targeted at the drug marijuana, it really can be. You can really substitute any one of the substances that can become a controlling part of somebody's life, and the message is the same.
Sure.
And one of the examples I like to use, because I have 3 children also, is that person that you're seeing in the street, or that's highly intoxicated, or, you know, drugged up or using, I said that person didn't just get that way overnight.
Right.
You know, they started somewhere,
Yeah.
and that could have been a 20-year cycle you're looking at where they're at now, or that could have been a year, 2 years. And so, you know, that's that spiral I'm always talking about, is that even with beer, I mean, you get to an age where you can start drinking beer and you start drinking, you know, the reality is you have to know limitations.
Absolutely.
And where it can turn, because we all have histories of, you know, drugs and alcohol in our families.
Yeah.
And I think you would be doing your children a disservice by not making them aware of
Sure.
that.
Sure. There's a big vote coming up, potentially, in November. We could see legalization of recreational marijuana on the ballot this year. How does that narrative change if that happens?
I think it becomes a little bit more difficult. I mean, you know, we're already dealing with, like I indicated, the perception of risk when it comes to marijuana use, and that's just based off of medical marijuana coming into the state not too long ago, about 10 years ago. Recreational use becomes legal. That means access becomes a little bit more. You end up again defining the narrative that it's no big deal. Given what today's marijuana looks and does compared to the 60s and 70s, there are far more risk, or the risk is greater depending on what you're ingesting or putting into your body. And so, again, it's going to require, you know, certainly continuing to educate, but, you know, at the end of the day, it's going to that. If it is legalized, that hill becomes a mountain in trying to really bring across the idea, because it's not, you know, people will argue that it's about, well, we're tired of locking up people for possession and use of marijuana. Well, the reality is that isn't happening today. I mean, you look at the prison population, you look at the jail population, your simple possession folks are not spending time in jail. And they're certainly not spending time in prison. So, we have to be careful about what we're listening to in the message that's being sent and the motivation of the messenger. For us, you know, although it may appear as though we're trying to advocate that marijuana is a bad substance, we're really trying to educate in the fact that it's no different than a prescription medication or drinking alcohol. It's really about understanding what it is, what it does, and whether or not you're an individual that is susceptible to abusing it.
Sure. I mean, you know, the message is sent to a kid every time they walk into a convenience store. All this beautiful booze is there.
Sure.
And it's all this colorful packaging, and it tastes like raspberries. And you know, I look back at my younger days, and I'm glad it was only Stroh's Light, because that my old man kept in the fridge, because it tasted like crap. But I can only imagine what it would have been like if it would have been all these great flavors and all that stuff. And it's scary when you're little.
always use a cigarette comparison
Yeah.
too. With you look at how many people smoked 30 years ago
Sure.
as compared to today. I mean,
Yeah.
we've done a really good job of educating people of the dangers of cigarettes, and that's really what we're trying to do here. Is it doesn't
They can't hear it. His phone's ringing. They can't hear it. You're good.
they, so I mean, it's really a sober lifestyle,
Yeah.
and that's where my personal belief comes from. Is
Sure.
really it's not try to leave all substances alone
Yeah.
because of the risk.
Sure, absolutely. When's the talk happening?
So April 20th,
Okay.
12:30 to 1:15 is when we're going to be at the high school. Certainly, all the Orchard View High School students are going to be present, and I know invitations have gone out to the other area schools
Sure.
to kind of fill the empty seats. And so, really, it's a straightforward conversation. After it is going to be recorded,
Yep.
and will be available online at some point in time after the event itself.
Okay.
In particular, for parents to have an opportunity, and certainly schools that weren't able to participate, to give them that opportunity as
Sure.
well.
You did it at Fruitport first, right?
We did it at Muskegon Community College.
Okay. Yeah.
So this venue at Orchard View is a lot bigger
Yeah.
than MCC.
Okay, cool. April 20th. It is Shattering the Myths, a little education on marijuana. DJ, Jason, thank you guys so much. Keep up the good work.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'm going to try and sneak out of here before any... All the details are right here on the Muskegon channel. You guys, great job. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Again, Shattering the Myths coming up on April 20th with DJ out at Orchard View.